So, for the past 4 weeks, we've all been watching what seems like a pretty straightforward story, a decisive military victory for the US and Israel against Iran. But if you look just beneath those headlines, a far more complicated and frankly more dangerous picture starts to emerge, one that has the entire global economy teetering on a knife's edge.
And it really all comes down to this single number, $126. That is the price today for 1 barrel of crude oil. And that number, well, it's causing absolute panic in capitals all the way from Washington to Beijing.
And the result of that panic? We are now smack in the middle of the largest disruption to the world's energy supply in 50 years. Before the war, the price was hovering around $75 a barrel. It's nearly doubled, which brings us to the central question of this whole conflict. How can the US and Israel be winning so completely on the battlefield, but at the same time be triggering a global economic crisis?
To understand that paradox, we have to rewind the clock. We've got to go back to day one, to the opening shots of a campaign that was codenamed Operation Epic Fury.
Look, this war did not just come out of the blue. For years, there was the so-called shadow war, proxy fights, covert ops. But in 2024, the old rules just went out the window with the first ever direct missile exchanges. That spun up into the 12-day war in mid-2025, which hit Iran's nuclear program hard but didn't finish it. Then, by the beginning of 2026, the Iranian regime brutally crushed these massive protests at home, and that really set the stage for this.
And when the attack finally came, it was just overwhelming. The first wave of airstrikes was a mind-blowing tactical success. We're talking over 9,000 military targets hit. Iran's navy was basically crippled, and most critically, the strikes decapitated the regime. I mean, they took out the very top of the leadership, assassinating Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The goal was crystal clear: get rid of their nuclear program and collapse the Islamic Republic.
But here's the thing. While Iran knew it couldn't win a fight in the air, it decided to fight back on a completely different battlefield, one where the entire world would feel the pain.
And this is that battlefield, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow little stretch of water is, without a doubt, the single most important choke point for the world's energy supply. Think about it, about 20%, a full fifth of all the oil on the planet flows right through here. If you control this, you've got your hand on the world's economic windpipe.
And Iran squeezed hard. The effect wasn't just fast, it was historic. It created what analysts are now calling the worst supply shock since the energy crisis back in the 1970s.
And when you look at the numbers, you see just how devastatingly effective Iran's strategy has been. The flow of oil collapsed from 20 million barrels a day to under 2. The number of ships passing through, it dropped from over 100 vessels a day to fewer than 5. Iran effectively just turned off the tap for the entire Persian Gulf.
And you've got to understand, this wasn't some desperate last-ditch move. No, this was a brilliant, calculated economic assault. It's a masterclass in what military strategists call asymmetric warfare, using unconventional tactics to fight a much stronger enemy. Iran laid a bunch of sophisticated naval mines, then carved out a tiny, Tehran-approved shipping lane through its own waters and started charging insane fees for what it called safe passage. Get this, one Chinese tanker reportedly had to pay $2 million just to get through. Which brings us right back to that central, nagging paradox of this whole conflict. How is it possible for a military to be hitting every single one of its targets, while its government is staring down the barrel of a strategic catastrophe?
Well, it all comes down to a fundamental clash in what each side considers winning. For the US and Israel, they need a total victory, right? Regime collapse, nuclear program gone, the whole shebang. But Iran's goal, it's much, much simpler. Just survive. If the regime can just hang on, absorb the punishment, and inflict enough economic pain to force a negotiation, for them, that's a win. You know, Chuck Freilich over at the Middle East Institute put it perfectly. He said, in this kind of fight, for Iran, just surviving is victory. By simply enduring, by not breaking, the Iranian regime proves it can't be toppled, and that actually makes them stronger, both at home and on the world stage.
And politically, Iran's economic strategy is absolutely working. Back in the US, public support for the war is cratering as gas prices soar. A new YouGov poll shows a solid majority, 56%, now oppose the war. And a Quinnipiac poll shows a staggering 74% of Americans are against sending in ground troops, which, by the way, might be the only way to physically reopen the strait. So, all of this leaves the administration facing a truly terrible choice. Do you double down and escalate a military strategy that's working tactically but failing strategically? Or do you cut your losses and negotiate?
And right now, it looks like they're trying to walk both paths at once. On the one hand, you have diplomacy. On March 23rd, the president announced a 5-day pause in the airstrikes, talking about constructive conversations. But on the other hand, there's escalation. The military is reportedly getting parts of the 82nd Airborne ready for a super high-risk mission to seize Iran's main oil terminal on Karg Island and physically force that strait open. It's a choice between talking from a weak position or risking a full-blown ground war.
So here we are, 4 weeks in. One side has achieved almost total military dominance. The other has brought the global economy to its knees, and it leaves us with a fundamental and deeply uncomfortable question for warfare in the 21st century. When a string of tactical victories creates a massive strategic crisis, who is actually winning?